Good day, gang, and welcome to Friday's Forward Focus. It is not August 30th, though, so let me get this changed here quick. That's more like it. September 6th, 1 week until my birthday. Woohoo! All right. My son, he's having his birthday party the day after my birthday, which is hilarious because he's like, yes, it's my birthday. I'm like, no, it's really mine. Your birthday's today, Harvey. Congratulations. We're having to do a lot of congratulations for you, man. Harvey just got married and now he's having a birthday party. You're going to have a birthday party, right? Even if it's just the two of you, for sure. And Karen's is the 16th. Mine's the 13th. Wow, we got a lot of Virgos in here. Well, happy birthday to everybody whose birthday is this month. We're going to get started here over on our charts. So we're going to take a look at the big picture first. We're going to pop on over and look at our NASDAQ and our S&Ps and all of that fun stuff first, and then we will go look at some of the other markets. So you keep hiding my chart. Where did you go? There we go. Okay, well, we will close this. Oh, but you know what? Before I close this, take a note here. These are the 6 building blocks of price development. So if you want to do a screenshot of this really fast, this is the time to do it before I close this screen. So these are the 6 things that I look for in every single trade. And the most important ones: momentum, trend development, time development, support, and resistance. Volume and correction periods are a little more iffy, and they're a little bit more dependent upon the surroundings of those other building blocks. But if you want to jot these down here fast or grab a screenshot of those are the things that I look for on every single trade. So yeah, I'm going to close this out here now. You can go back and watch it in the video too. So if you don't get them all right now, go back and rewatch the session. It will be on YouTube pretty quickly after we close, and then you'll find it on my homepage too. All right, here is the S&P. I'm going to go up to larger time frames. I want to start out taking a look at what we've got going on a much bigger scale here. So I'll make this like full screen here for us. I'm going to start on the monthly. It's been a while since we've done like the full bigger market outlook. I did that like at the beginning of the year, but we're going to kind of do like a kind of a little quick session here. Just look at some of these bigger charts here. So I want you guys to keep in mind the context of where we are at in the overall market. We have not seen this scale of volatility since 2015, and it didn't last nearly as long. So the market that we're in right now is something, a lot of traders really hadn't seen, starting January 2018. This market is something that is pretty rare for a lot of traders to trade in, but it's actually not that rare historically. So, when I first started trading, it was typical to see this type of action. Obviously, less price action here, but it's typical to see more of the back and forth type of moves. So the trend that we've seen since 2009, this is, less common because we are in a strong trending uptrend market. It's a lot more common for the market to have congestive periods of where it's going back and forth, not as solid of a trend move. And so we're actually at a point where this trend is pretty extended. It can still push to some higher highs, but the odds just are going to keep increasing that we still see more and more of that back and forth on the weekly time frames and on the monthly time frames. So we just have to keep that in mind as we go forward, that this is kind of much the new norm, you know? So if you're used to trading from 2009 to 2018, this is the new norm now. And this is going to stay the new norm for quite a while. We might have brief periods with some stronger trend moves like, you know, you see from, you know, 2016 into 2017, but this is pretty much common. If you look at any individual stock in the market, that's what things are looking like too. So when we go down to like a daily time frame, this action on the daily time frame, this is pretty normal type of action. Yes, the volatility is much higher though. And so we're getting some pretty wide intraday swings. This is why it's good for futures traders that the micros came out when they did, because they can decrease the risk on the trades and still take advantage of these swings without having as much risk on the line on the trades. So on the daily chart, what we're looking at was, as we were coming into this congestion here, we had a move down. It came more than 50% back up, and then it came into this channel. Now, there were a couple of things that could have happened here at this point. I'm going to kind of move my screen over so we can see the side of things. When you're in a congestive market like this and you start getting some of these rapid moves, there's a number of ways how things can unfold and start and continue to correct. So this could have gone into something like this and gone and tried more of a breakdown with a slower move and then tried to bounce back up, or it could have done what it's done. And so we were talking in League of Traders about both of those potentials, and it really just depended upon, you know, how this momentum played out here and how it reacted as it came to the upper end of that channel. By coming all the way back to the upper end of the channel, it's kind of helped out with the bulls. So we got the two-wave move coming out of a little bit of a phoenix here. This is extended the intraday trend. So we're at a pretty good level of trend exhaustion on the daily charts right now. We should start to see things widen up again, just like you saw happening back over here. That's the same type of thing that can happen now at this point. So widening out can take a couple of forms. It can go into, let me clear this here. It can go into more of kind of a gentle pullback, and then kind of creep higher so we can see, you know, some of the wider moves like you got going on over here. And then it can turn around. That can lead to a more rapid correction. It can even do that and then go for a pattern I call momentum reversal plus. So it's your three highs, usually a two-wave correction, two-wave move back up, and then a larger rapid correction. The more rounded off this high is, the faster it can fall. Now, when we're looking at movement coming off of lows into highs, I posted this in our League of Traders forum today. When you have a slower start to a move and it gains speed, you're more likely to see pivot types of highs, where things will hold an absolute high and they might get going, you know, slowly and then gain momentum, but they're more likely to hold that high or really close to that absolute high if they get off to a slower start. If they get off to a really rapid start, like over here, then you're more likely to see the trend keep pushing and keep pushing for higher highs, and more likely to see rounded highs coming off of that. We're a little bit in the middle here because it has a fast start, but it's kind of slower compared to the ending of it. So it does increase the odds that we could get a little bit more pivot action, but it's not perfect. So if we look at this on a 240-minute chart, you can see the details of that a little bit more. And this is kind of how it's getting started. You know, it's not just a rapid push immediately up. It's kind of taking a little bit slower time, even though on the daily chart it looked really steep and really fast. So we are getting some shifting in momentum, but this is something we could still see this try to continue to push up here. So this is measured move. It was almost exactly a measured move yesterday into that high. So we're just getting a reaction off of that. And this is a good zone for things to start to chop around a bit more too. So intraday, it's going to be a little bit more risky as we go into the end of the day. Things are, have a chance that we might not see as strong late day action. The Russell has been having really strong, solid moves over the last couple of days. Nasdaq's been a little bit choppier. Let me show you guys the Russell. Actually, here we'll look at the ES here first. So you can see the last couple of days have been kind of choppy. As I mentioned in League of Traders yesterday, we were going into this really steep 2T pattern. So the second move up was stronger than the first. So it's still a 2T type of reversal, but it has a harder time really turning around. And it opens the door that this could have flushed to a high up here. This is what we were talking about yesterday morning, or midday rather, I guess it was. So that kept it from really giving a sharp of a turnaround, but it has led into a time correction. And that's been the case on the NASDAQ as well. So let me grab the NASDAQ first. Let's see, where's my chart that has a bunch of tabs on it? Here we go. So this one. So you can even see on the 10-minute chart just how choppy things have been. Oops, go hide there, you. Happy birthday, Harvey. So here you can see how choppy things have been on the 10-minute chart. So here's that steep attempted 2T type of move. A typical 2T, you'd actually have same momentum. It would go to slightly higher high with a measured move. So it would stop right about here and then go into reversal strategies at that point. Basically, it tried to do a second one here, but couldn't quite make it to a higher high. Two-wave correction, and then things get a little bit more wonky with our megaphone here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is your shorting point. We had a nice week of megaphones a couple weeks back where we talked about megaphones all week. Next week in League of Traders, we are going to be talking about the shallow avalanche. If I see any in here, I'll point that out to you too today. It's going to be next week's focus. And a shallow avalanche, just a really quick, is something that starts out kind of slower and then it goes into free fall mode. So I'm going to tell you how to look for that so that you guys can capture these free fall moves before they really get going. Okay, so larger time frames. Here's the 20,000 tick. See, pretty good ruling over here, so good exhaustion of the highs. Here's where, 2T type of action tends to take place. We might get a little bit of a head and shoulders in here. It's not actually a high enough high, believe it or not, for this to be what I would consider to be an ideal head and shoulders. This is more of like a 2T type of high. Ideally, I would really like to have seen that just a little bit higher to do a head and shoulders. Just kind of trap a little bit more up in there. When a head only has like just a this week we've been talking about head and shoulders. So when a head only has just like a very brief little pop above it, kind of like a flush over what would be your shoulder, it's not really as ideal because it could just go into a range that can still end up breaking higher. So you got to be more cautious with that kind. Not as perfect for your typical head and shoulders. But this can certainly go into a 2T, and then you might get like an avalanche, things like that. That's more common with one that might go just a little bit higher. but you want to see that drop a little bit more on this side. So for 2T, it came right into first target levels, but we're not quite seeing the continuation yet. I usually like to see them do more of a 1, 2, 3. So it's still holding up pretty well because of that. So on the daily, that means that this could still push a little bit more into this resistance over here. You'll notice the high is almost to the high back in April, but not quite. I would not be surprised at all if that pushes into that absolute test of resistance a little bit better next week. You're hoping for that? Yep, that's what I'm thinking is going to happen too. All right, let's pull up the Russell. I'll show you guys what's going on. The Russell here has just been, my charts are not behaving here. There we go. So the Russell has just been having these really nice swings back and forth, and this had a picture perfect measured move here. This is kind of the example of what you will see coming out of a shallow Phoenix, although this is not a shallow Phoenix. This is just more of a typical handle of a cup with handle type of Phoenix. You've got your momentum reversal at the lows, 1, 2, 3. My pen is a little jumpy today, but you've got that typical move and then the 1, 2, 3 extension here. And then this has just been doing these really nice pivots back and forth. There's a little bit of shift in momentum here at the lows that helps pull this back up to the upper end. This is kind of something where it can still gain momentum back up there because it's kind of going further than you would usually see for an avalanche to happen. So it's basically at a do or die point right here. But this is something that we can see these continue to pull higher. Let's go take a look at the daily on this. So daily is kind of, midway iffy here. Like it came off the lows really well. It's coming into a slower pullback. This could have easily gained momentum on the downside, but you would have expected it to have done it in here and not wait out as long to try to do it. So it's almost acting like, not quite like an inverse head and shoulders, but almost close. So you've got like the shoulder type of action. The time development is pretty good for it. It just didn't quite bounce really off of that right shoulder. It had that stronger momentum there to start with. And that we saw that increased risk on shoulders, but we've also seen it work. So on the NASDAQ today, we were looking at a head and shoulders this morning. I'm going to pull that up there. It was in here. I'm going to go down to a smaller time frame. Right here. Might be too small, but at least you guys can see it. Look here, I'll just like, whoops, never mind. Come on, man. My charts are just not totally behaving. Look, I can practically line it up with my template there. So we saw that have like that stronger side over here as well on the NASDAQ. And you can see how it got off to a choppier start. It ended up hitting the 100%, but there was a lot more back and forth. And so as that one went forward, you can see there was a lot of chop, even though it did still manage to basically go back up to previous highs. Let me show you the bigger time frame on that. So here's where it was in here. And so it still managed to make it back up to do the bigger measured move, but it had that choppier start to it. And that's what you risk over here on the daily on the Russell too. So this is something where I really play much smaller time frames. I realize that the daily, it wouldn't take a lot of momentum shift to turn things one way or the other at this point. So you really have to watch, like the 240 is a good one, the 120 is a good one, 120-minute chart, and they can help show you like where momentum shifts are happening. You can see the timing here on the last portion of this as well as the head and shoulders. We talked about this the other day too. Basically what I'm doing is I'm ignoring that first low. That's part of like the momentum reversal 2B type of low, and focusing on the time development here. So this is technically your Phoenix on this side, but it's part of that bigger turnaround here, and you still got that nice even time development. So this can help this continue higher. You're gonna have some resistance with measured move levels, but it could even go and gain speed. So I wouldn't completely rule that out here. Let's go flip over, look at some of the other markets now. Let's see here. We'll look at bonds, and we can look at wheat again too. Bonds pull up there. I'm going to go grab a chart on gold too. I have been trading gold a lot lately. So I'm going to show you the daily that we've got going on in gold. I mean, it doesn't look too different from last week, just because we're basically dealing with the same level of resistance. But we'll see some of the details on here. Gold had a nice head and shoulders type of action here this morning on intraday charts too. So gold, what you can see here is that this is the daily chart. We have this kind of similar type of action we've seen a lot lately in the overall market. This is, how some of these things can turn around. We saw this on, I believe it was the NASDAQ this morning. Just see if I can find that chart. I was looking at comparison here. Kind of the 100 tick almost now looks pretty similar to that too. If you pull up a 100 tick chart of the NASDAQ, let me grab that quick to show you the comparison. Very similar type of stuff going on here on this. We are right about, let me draw like the comparison moves here. So difference is, this kind of has that stronger drop here to start with. So this would have to go pull up and form like that little baby phoenix to get going on the upside, just like this had on that daily chart. Patterns just pop out to me. I'm like, hey, I've seen you before. But it comes down to little things like this. See that little end right there? How that had that little baby phoenix? That's what gets this pattern going on the upside. The NASDAQ on the 100 tick, kind of struggling with that right now. But here's the daily chart on this. You can see, good measured move action up in here, and then things are starting to widen up. So we're really in this type of zone here, greater volatility like we saw at the end of June into July. That's likely to continue here as we head throughout September. This could still push up to a third high, like momentum reversal, keeping this wider channel coming back up there. or it could go and do a head and shoulders. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more extension for a head and shoulders. So I think that if it tries a head and shoulders, the right shoulder might have a slower drop, and then it might go for even a slightly higher high on the larger time frames. Because this is, even though this overall move is close to 100%, this doesn't really put enough extension over here that I love it quite yet for bigger reversals. It's just more intraday type of corrections. I wouldn't get too excited about a bigger one yet with what is here so far. It could develop into one. It's just not as high of a probability setup. So that is gold. You know what? I can show you the other head and shoulders here fast too. So here's, this is the one that I traded this morning on gold. So you can see it had like a little 2T type of action with a little baby 2T in here. So that's what I shorted. And then it went into that bigger head and shoulders. This nice momentum shift here, see how it spiked first? Really rapid, and so then it keeps pushing to higher highs. If it starts out more slowly and gradually and gains momentum, you're more likely to see a V pivot high that will hold the highs and not give you that extra push after that momentum impulse wave. That's one thing that can help you from getting trapped in a trend day with just constantly going the wrong way, thinking, oh, hey, this is exhausted. You know, pay attention to those time frame charts, not just the tick charts. All right. So bonds here, nice little 2T. It had a 3-wave into the high versus our typical 2-wave. So here's more of the typical 2-wave over here, kind of was more of a double top at that point. But it went for the 2T with a slightly higher high over here, and then it's dropped pretty fast. Let me check on updating our expirations on this computer. Oh, we got everything. Oh, yeah, I thought that was rolled over. There we go. Because I want to show you December here. Because September is expiring here. So futures contracts expire the third Friday of the month. So you'll start to see the new contract the Thursday before expiration. I'll just update that too while it's doing that. You can see it doesn't affect, you know, that back there, but it's going to as we progress through September and we get close to that expiration. So here's another, so it's kind of almost a head and shoulders in here, a little rounding off, pulled into the first support. I'm going to go up to a little bit of a bigger time frame. This is something, here's your second chance on the retest of the support. This is what we talked about the last 3 weeks in League of Traders, second chance opportunities. So this has a good shot of pulling back up into here. I'm going to go look at some different time frames though. Here's our monthly chart. So really strong momentum on the monthly. Just this kind of started out slower. So this is a kind that can have a bit of a pivot top. This is like what we were seeing in the overall market here. So kind of a little bit slower increase that can have more of these pivot highs. Go to a daily. It really looks a lot like gold, huh? chart I showed you on gold? Right here. Very, very similar. I got some crazy people over here, don't I? Yeah, so it still looks like we're going to get that push up more on this daily. I wouldn't suspect this will go to a head and shoulders. I think it could even go to a higher high, just based upon how this is acting. But we'll see how momentum holds as it pulls up into there. Intraday 15-minute chart, there's that second chance entry that had a second chance entry on it as well. It's trying to go for a little baby 2T here as it's hitting this resistance. So this could pause this here. Intraday, it'd be just scalp action though because of the strength of the momentum coming off of that double bottom there. So probably nothing I would really do too much with on this right here. But this is a perfect example of the retest with a little bit of a 2B and then your second chance entry on that. So a couple weeks ago in League of Traders Live, we spent the week looking at how to get into second chance entries where your risk ends up being virtually like a couple of ticks. It's crazy how tight your stops can be on stuff. Let's see here. Let's go take a look at some of the other markets. I'm going to look at some individual stocks for you guys. So post any individual stocks you want me to look at, and we will pull those up. I'm going to start with, we'll do the basics. Apple. I've been trading futures so much, I'm getting out of practice on my stock charts, you guys. On my trade station, rather. I just haven't been using it nearly as much. I have version 10 for TradeStation on my trading computer. One of these days I'll get around to actually updating this, right? And Donna says, I'm favoring the second chances. They feel safer. I know, I knew you guys would love them. You just have to know how to trade the core setups first. Otherwise, you can get smacked. Because you can't just short previous highs, buy previous lows, things like that. That just is not going to work as a long-term strategy. You've got to know the core setups first. So here's what we've got going on with Amazon. So you can see the rapid spike up there, kind of the V-top, and we're right at that retest zone. This still is at levels where we could see it widen up more like that. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. That could go into a head and shoulders. But basically, I'm looking for more correction here over the next 5 years or so as continues to react here. If it absolutely holds this high here, that can take it into a longer base that can lead to another bigger impulse move to the upside. I just don't know that that's going to happen. It kind of feels like it wants to creep back up into that high there. But we're definitely at a zone of exhaustion. So a lot of the tech stocks are seeing the same type of thing happening. This is a monthly chart. I'll show you what it looks like on a daily. So you can see a lot of that indecision even here on the daily chart. It's really gappy. And it's almost trading like an ADR, the way it's been trading here. American Depository Receipt. ADR, for those of you that are new, ADS too, security. They're basically foreign companies, and then you've got you're able to trade the foreign company. So you get a lot of gaps after hours, which makes sense on Apple, even though it's not technically an ADR. But here's an example of how, if you look at this right here on the daily chart, that's what could happen on that monthly chart, where we would be right here on the monthly, and then it could do that extra push up and then go into a head and shoulders. So actually what you're looking at right here on the daily, that's what could happen on the monthly chart. It would just take years versus a couple months for it to unfold like that. This daily over here is really iffy, you guys. I mean, it's almost trying to do a 2T that would pull back. So a couple more days of upside, that could even give a really strong swing trade on the short side towards the end of next week or even the middle of next week, just depending upon. I would aim for like probably Thursday is what I would want to see for that to pull up there. So look for that next week. That's what I'd be watching for on Apple. Of course, that could affect the overall market too, and that kind of goes along with, hey, the NASDAQ still has a little bit of room that it could push up. RGEN. This is kind of the same type of thing. I mean, here would be like where Apple would be on the monthly time frame. So this could still pop more here. You have momentum shifting enough to try it. You just gotta get the confirmation on the momentum on the breakout here. I'm gonna look at the monthly on this. Widen that up here. So this is one when it spikes, it could do more of a V type of top and end up holding the high and not going to a higher high. It could go into a more gradual correction, but it could still do another push here before it tries that. So I'm looking at this still to, it's not as slow of a start as ones where it would totally do a V pivot, but it has enough of that going on that when this flushes to the downside, you're going to get a hard pullback on this when it finally does happen. So easily like a 23.6, 38.2% pullback. I know it does look a lot like Bitcoin, doesn't it? I don't have my chart that goes back far enough on Bitcoin. Let's do a daily on here. So you can kind of see the daily action here on Bitcoin. I wanted to show you a couple years back. But my chart is not going back that far. But it looks like Bitcoin did in January going into 2018. If you want to pull that up. This is pretty good trend action on Bitcoin. I mean, look at that. That's a perfect short setup right here where you get, this is your second chance entry. You got a nice two-wave up into there. Nice two-wave correction back down. MIDD. Let's see here. That's that roll over there. You've got a little bit of a momentum reversal type of move here. Go bigger time frame on this. So this is something it looks like it could develop into a shallow avalanche over here, but it's not perfect for it. Kind of iffy. You got your three highs, 1, 2, and 3 here. But I would just treat this as just intraday scalps, short-term scalps, because there's so many changes that can happen in the momentum within this congestion that because these are still pretty strong on the upside with, good deal of spacing between each of these three highs, it's not necessarily going to lead into a total momentum reversal. It could still lead into a much longer period of just correction and upside still. Call this like the pointed ballet toe momentum reversal. This was a good short there with the wave counting. Let me do the short-term wave counting on here so you can see that. I'm going to tighten this up here. So with a momentum reversal, you got your 3 highs, evenly spaced, V's and inverse V's. This has a little bit of a head and shoulders up here at the high to short it, along with the megaphone. 2-wave correction down, 2-wave correction back up. Nice level. You would usually get another 2-wave correction back down. And this could even go with some stronger momentum, but this is major support over here. So this might go into 1, 2, 3. What I saw on the daily chart wasn't quite perfect on it, but let's go look at that. So shorter term daily on this, what you would usually get for 1, 2, 3 to keep up that momentum is that this would almost do like closer to a V pivot, and then it would do like a 2-wave correction and then get going again. So I still think it can go lower on this, but I would expect it to do it a little bit slower because it didn't hold an absolute V type of pivot here. So probably more likely like that it could come down like that. A little bit kind of choppier. Short term, intraday, 30-minute is pretty strong up here. This would be a spot I would watch for head and shoulders patterns intraday on like a 30-minute chart. That's what I would watch to turn that around. That would help kind of even out this momentum since it picked up momentum here. It can go into a head and shoulders. That's what it would take to turn that, to pull it back down to the lower end of the channel here at least. So I don't think it's quite ready for anything right here, but it could be by midweek next week. Google. I know alphabet, I'm never going to call it that. I'm just always forget that. You spend 20 years calling something something and then they go and change the name on you. Okay, so Alphabet Inc. Similar to what we've got going, it looks a lot like the chart on gold on the daily and monthly, up to the monthly on gold, doesn't it? Just same type of idea up here. A little bit of head and shoulders. So you've got some resistance. This could pull back in here. I think overall you're going to keep in this congestion. That's what I've thought for the last year and a half. Yeah, it is kind of megaphone-ish. Let's go look at that daily again. Daily, there's not a good setup on this. I mean, you've got a V bottom here. This could easily still come back up. There's just too iffy in here. And this kind of looks like it would end up popping back up. 30-minute, I could still see it doing that. Basically treating this like your Phoenix, your slower start, and this as the trigger for your shallow Phoenix, where it treats like that till 1, 2, 3, and then does a widening up. So it might come down a little bit more here today, but I think overall that has room to still spike into next week. So you've got the slower start here, then your pullback, and then the really rapid move. So it's easier for that to do a second measured rapid move. And the daily can support it. McDonald's. Looking for pullback for a longer term trade. So you guys, something interesting here is oil is not trading at all with the overall market very well today. I just found that curious. It came off of a 2B and it's just kind of kept going. McDonald's. Hmm. I don't know. I mean, it's due for a pullback. You've got your measured move right there. So you're at a good spot for that to happen, to get a pullback at it. If it could push to a slightly higher high, that would create a little bit more trap action. Kind of pull things down a little bit more. Today is like walking through molasses. It's always like walking through molasses on McDonald's. What are you talking about? Today. Yeah, I would want just a slight higher high here. Just kind of a little bit more trap. You got measure move here and then there coming up on it. Daily, you can see there's even a little bit of a baby inverse head and shoulders here. So that's kind of weighing on the bears. That's going to want to pull this up a little bit more. So give it a little bit more time for that pullback, but I definitely think it's coming. It's really close to a level that that would happen at. Gold just dropped off of a cliff with an avalanche on the 15-minute chart. Let me grab that chart on gold for you quick. I missed it. I've been trading gold all day. I was waiting for this to try to develop, but it set up during our class. Let's see here. There you go. You can see that pretty avalanche here on gold. Just a good example of what they can look like. Almost acts like there was some news that came out. Right at 12:46, because there's a spike in volume in the market too at the same time, but it could have just been a regular flush. Just a second, you guys. I'm just looking at another chart here quick. All right. Let's see. Any other individual stocks you want me to look at? Can't give you the Momo lines like a few weeks ago. If one line is very strong and second is strong, but not as long as third. Okay, I think this is what you're talking about. So if you've got kind of a steady momentum move here, whoops, hold on. Steady momentum move here, increase in momentum move here, there's a greater chance you're going to get a third move, a third leg, and the third leg will usually be weaker. And it can be half the first move, or it can go for a full measured third move. So that's one example with momentum shift. If it is more of a steady move, your three legs are more likely to be like that. but it can also be a two-leg move where your two-leg corrections take the same time as it would between here and here. So you can get those differences where one will be 2 waves and then the other one can be 3 waves. So that's a couple examples. On Netflix, and this trap, we talked about this trap weeks ago. That's a deadly type of trap. Netflix has so much competition now, you guys. It's a lot harder for this. See how this had that slower start? This is what I was talking about. When it has a slower start and then pivots, that V is more likely to hold long term. So this Netflix is going to be struggling. I mean, you got support here from this previous zone of lows, but longer term, it's going to struggle. So this, even on the daily here, this could even go into a tilted continuation like what we're looking for on the euro dollar. You know, the euro dollar is kind of doing the same type of thing. By the way, NASDAQ here is all the way back to morning lows. So whatever dropped the market a second ago while we were chatting, it plunged it right back into morning lows. 45-minute charts, you know, it's actually not a big surprise on 45-minute charts that we're getting selling because, you know, we had the rounding off at the highs up here. So it could be just total normal market action, doesn't have to have been news driven. Where's my... I wanted to show you a different time frame chart, but I don't have all my time frame charts lined up properly right now. So here you can see the morning low, at least on the 2000 tick. All right, back into that support there. So this gained speed as it went into here. So you can get more pivots, rapid pivots happening. Kind of rapid bounce moves. That's actually what's happening on the 15-second chart here right now. See how it does a stronger pivot because it got going slower. This is a 10-second chart, but same thing, 15-second. It has a more rapid pivot because of that. Disney. Disney daily can still creep up. It had that kind of momentum-esque reversal to be type of move, but it's so, I don't know. It's at a level I'm not thrilled about trying to invest in it longer term. I'd probably just stay away from Disney right now myself. Looks like it's going to just get choppier in here on the daily time frame. And a lot of stocks are looking like that right now. Intraday, a little bit 2T-ish action, but stronger momentum, so it's not really turning around that fast off of it. So this 30-minute could base out and go do another wave like that with how it is forming right now. The V pivot low on the NASDAQ is just what I was talking about earlier today, you guys. Things get started slower and then they get that rapid flush and then it can bounce faster. And that's what the NASDAQ is doing right now. Show it to you. See, check that out. Exactly like we were talking about, right? Perfect example. All right, you guys got anything else you want me to take a look at here quick? Nope. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap up here just a couple of minutes here early today. I've got to run out here shortly. But I will get this up for you on YouTube here. We're only 5 minutes early. Get this up to you on YouTube so you guys can go back and review and have a wonderful weekend, you guys. And I will see you all next week. On Saturday, tomorrow, I am doing a class. Let me post the link for you. It is www.tonihanson.com/Saturday, free all day. So join me over there. It is www.tonihanson.com/Saturday. Saturday. There you go. So hope to see a bunch of you over there tomorrow. 1 o'clock Eastern is when I present. So have a wonderful weekend, you guys, and I will see you soon.